Hello, everyone. It's Michele Maher here, and I'm joined with Andrea Ivanka this afternoon. So thank you so much, Andrea, for giving me your time to talk about what we've been dealing with the last coming up on 7 months now, and how to keep a positive mindset while pivoting in your life and your business. And do you want to just give us a few words about who you are and what you're all about?
Sure. So, hi everybody. Really, I'm thrilled to be here, and it's the 100th episode. So, before I
Yes,
say anything about me,
yes,
congratulations for
100th episode.
starting this and keeping it going through all of these months. I think it's really been a bright light, a shining light for a lot of people as we've been going through these times. So, as Michelle said, my name is Andrea Ivanka. I have been working with entrepreneurs and service-based professionals for about 7 years now, and really, what we do inside of our company is to help leaders and entrepreneurs maximize that leadership potential, which in these times is pretty important.
Right. Yes, for sure. And as we were saying before we got on camera here, I started doing these interviews just to share the wisdom and credible knowledge and advice from all the entrepreneurs that I know. And I did find myself getting really into the fear at the beginning when things were shut down, because it was like living in a movie. That's how it felt like I was living in a movie. And it was March break coming up, and my daughter's Europe trip was canceled because obviously she was scheduled to go to Italy. So that got totally, well, the board canceled all of the trips. So um, it was just one thing after another. And then all of a sudden, when they announced the NBA was suspending the season and sports were getting canceled, I knew that this was something we've never seen before. And so I just really found I could really get into that spiral of fear, and I didn't want to stay there. So I wanted to do something to serve others, and that's how this was started. And like as you said, it's now my 100th episode, which we're celebrating. So thank you for being here. And I wanted you to just let kind of relay your experience as it were at the beginning.
It's interesting, like something you said just it really struck me of the fear, right? I think when we are going through things, like none of us has ever been through this before, so everybody's in this situation, and like the way our minds work when we're faced with the unknown, it's really easy to go into all of like what could happen that is very scary. And our minds have just been wired that way for years and years and years because of survival. And so your ability to acknowledge like, hey, you didn't want to stay in the fear spiral and started this like first for yourself and then for others is really powerful, because when we get stuck in that fear, that's where really like we can't pivot. We can't actually get into a place of positivity, never mind, if we're sick or any of those things that are going on. And
Right. We just stop, really. You get paralyzed, paralyzed with fear, and then you would be tempted to stay in bed, not get dressed, stay in bed, or watch Netflix all day, and try to escape, because and it's primal, right? It's going back to human nature.
yeah, yeah, well, absolutely, right. And then when you're in this place of, okay, we are dealing with the unknown, how you actually start to manage your mind, manage your emotions, like your physical body, all of these things. And I'm sure we're going to talk about some of this. Like there are so many different things that we can do that will help us feel better, so that even though there's all of this unknown going on, we can actually at least, make it through the day, make it through the week, when there's just so much unknown coming at us every single day. And that's going to be part of the foreseeable future. And I really believe that the people that are going to not just survive but thrive are the people that are having these kind of conversations around like, what can I do to help myself? And this, I certainly had to walk the talk because I was sick for over 6 weeks. I mean, it was crazy. I never want to be that sick again in my life.
Right. Yes. Yes. And I understand that you got sick. Was it back in March?
Yeah, back in March. We were just coming off of like, I had just done an interview series similar to what you do, like back to back. I had interviewed like New York Times bestselling authors, all of these people, and we were just coming off of it. And I was supposed to be doing like some events we were planning and all of this. And then I started to feel not so good. And my brother, who travels for work, and his wife works at the airport as a border guard, she wasn't sick, but he was. And the next thing we knew, he was getting screened as positive, which basically means, okay, back then, like mid-March, we didn't have the testing that we do now for COVID.
Right.
They put you in touch with doctors, and I had to go through this whole process, like talking to doctors, like them listening to my symptoms. And before you know it, he got screened as positive, then I got screened as positive, and like boom, it's like self-isolation, right? So it was intense.
Right.
It was really intense. Like everything shutting down, and like no matter how much I wanted to get up and be on the, okay, like let's pivot with the business and let's do this and let's do that. There was a time where I literally couldn't. I couldn't get out of bed. I was coughing, and like when they talk about the cough, I coughed so hard for weeks that literally, this is going to sound kind of gross, but this was my reality. Like my laundry basket would just be full of like towels from like coughing into, like my clothes would be soaked with sweat from coughing and coughing and coughing. Like that was the one thing about COVID. The amount of laundry that I did was insane. And I was very lucky because I still, like Satya, my partner, we actually helped take care of my grandmother. She's got dementia. So how we had to set things up and navigate even internally, like inside the condo, was very, very interesting to make sure that I stayed away from her.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
And so he was like doing all the groceries and kind of keeping the business going, him and our assistant and stuff. So there was this window where I realized I wasn't getting better. Right? I wasn't getting better. I'm immune compromised. I'm missing my spleen, which is part of your immune response. And so there hit a point, honestly, I just had to surrender. And that was so hard at the time. Like, I'm very driven. I really believe in making a positive difference in the world. And I just like, I wanted to be there for my clients. I wanted to be there for my people. I wanted to be there.
Yeah.
And accepting that I couldn't was really tough at first. It's really tough.
Right. Right, for sure. But you needed that. You needed to do that. You needed to take care of yourself, because if you need to be whole in order to serve your clients in the first place. And you just, so I guess you just were so weak and stayed in bed.
Yeah. I read a lot. I read a lot.
Yeah.
Like it was just like, that's all I could do. And it's really interesting. Like I am a very, very firm believer that things don't happen to us, they happen for us. It took me a long time to get here from a mental space. Like I've got in my history things like assault and rape and being ripped off and like all of these things. So getting to a point after all the personal work and the personal growth that I did on myself, I was like, okay, I can keep struggling and getting mad. And I think there was like one night where I just like, I broke down in tears with Satya because I was like, I'm terrified. I'm terrified that I'm going to end up in the hospital because it hurts so much to breathe. Like I had one of those nights.
Wow.
But I kept going like, what is there for me to learn? What's in this for me? And I realized, and like, I did a post on this like months ago. It felt like I got hit in the head with a spiritual 2x4. It was like, bam. It was like, I realized that all throughout my life, whenever I got sick, my go-to was always get better enough to get back to work. Right. And like I was just sharing, like I wanted to be in the middle of things. That's a very different focus than being healthy or healing. It's a totally different energy. It's a completely different come from. And I went, oh my God, I've been doing this for years. And here I am helping, other women and making sure that they've got space in their lives to put themselves first. And all of a sudden here was this like glaring reality that I was not doing it. So all of a sudden that whole experience started to open up for me to heal some things. Like at a belief level that I hadn't even been aware of that were in there. And it really took me going to like a full stop that I had to surrender. So I really feel like, and this might sound crazy, I feel like that was a gift.
Yeah.
That was a gift from the universe for me.
Yeah. To tell you that you couldn't continue like that. You couldn't keep going at the rate you were going.
Yeah.
You had to take that time.
Well, and make that part of the practice of my life, not
Yes, as
just, oh,
opposed
okay.
to just like you were basically catching up.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it had to be that intense, I guess, in order to catch up for all those years.
Yeah, maybe I was a little hard-headed before. It's like the universe was like, knock, 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 knock. We're trying to get your attention. We're trying to get, oh, you're still not paying attention. All right, bam.
And I think, yes, and I think that that is something that happens for so many women. You know, women are always worried about taking care of others.
Yeah.
And sometimes we do that. We put ourselves last. And that's something that can't continue.
Yeah. Well, and I look at the bigger picture. It's like you and I were chatting before we even started recording about right at the beginning of all of this. People were like, when are we going to just get back to how it was? You know, when are we going to go back to how it was? When
Back
are we
to
going to go back to how it was?
normal.
Yeah, back to normal, right? Back to normal, back to normal. And now I really feel like because of the forced slowdown, the forced distancing, some of the questions that leaders are asking, companies are asking, entrepreneurs are asking of themselves is really like, what do we want moving forward? And I think that's a powerful question. Like, what do we get to create as humanity moving forward? Because there are certain things that we got to really see are working, are not working, like entire industries brought to a standstill because of COVID. Right. And so we get to take a look at all of that. And I am a firm believer in this, and it might sound kind of crazy, but I've been saying this for about the last 2 or 3 years. It's what if we brought love into business? Like, really, how do you treat people you love? How would you treat the people that you work with, your employees, your JV partners? How would you treat your customers, your clients, your patients, right?
Right.
What if we brought love in? And we're starting to see that happening because of the care people have taken of one another, even in the midst of the frustration, even in the midst of, you know, are we masking, not masking? Are we social distancing, not social distancing? I really feel like there's been a kernel, at least in Canada, like we've been pretty lucky here, of, okay, we're taking care of one another. You know, I look at how careful even Satya and I have been because of being around my grandmother.
Right.
It's a whole level of, might sound really like high, but almost of compassion and kindness that we get to step into, right? So
Right, which is something I think that the world needs a lot more of, especially on the compassion side. And even when you look from a corporate standpoint and all the corporations having to send all the employees home to work, and then you have to deal with the fact that some of them are, you know, like your situation, living with a family member that is immune compromised or something.
Or kids at home.
And then the kids at home, and they have to have, now the leaders of these corporations have to have compassion for these people. You can't just say, oh, like now you have to come back to work. Well, some people don't feel comfortable necessarily if they have a situation that they need to, you know, be concerned about somebody at home. So it's really, and we did also see a lot of community coming together with people offering to do the grocery shopping for people that were immune compromised, or some condos setting up some sort of service in the, you know, some people in a condo setting up a service for people, not even people that they know necessarily, but, you know, seniors in the condo to bring them groceries and that kind of thing. And a lot more community coming together.
Yeah. And I think like when we choose to start looking at these things, right? If we're talking about pivot with positivity, right? Your mind starts to see what you feed it. right? And so you can look at growing numbers, for example, and have a lot of fear, or you can look at growing numbers and look at those things. Wow, there are communities coming together. There are people taking care of the elderly. There are people that are volunteering, right? Like even for me, I had a friend of mine, she had it as well. She was actually in the hospital. She got better faster than I did. And she came and dropped off medication for me, right? Because she knew what it was like because she had gone through it. And so just those simple kind gestures that I go back to when I was growing up, it was normal. You know, we used to play out on the street, all the kids would be out there. You'd have one of the parents watching all the kids so that the other parents could do things. And that sense of community, I feel like maybe somewhere got lost a little. And now people are craving it. Like they're wanting it. They're wanting to just be out, see their friends. Like I said, the thing that I miss the most, and I don't know if you can relate to this at all, but I've heard it from people, is just being able to give people hugs. Like just being able to give people a hug and feel like that warmth and that care. Like I don't think I will ever take that for granted again, you know?
Right. Right, exactly. And when you say that people are really craving it as well, when we were really shut down and nothing was open and everybody was at home and everybody was taking walks, more people were walking. Like I know in my neighborhood, I've never seen so many people walking. And I did have somebody on this interview series as well who said he's lived in a subdivision. He's out west, and he had never seen his neighbor or spoken to his neighbor in 4 years since he's lived there, because you just get out, you go into your car, you go to work. And now he's like having conversations with the neighbors, and there, that's not the only story like that. I've heard all kinds of people, same thing. They're actually talking to their neighbors and taking time to sit there and chit chat for a bit, which you didn't do before
Yeah.
because
Well,
everybody was busy.
yeah. Well, and all of that is part of what helps people to kind of manage their emotions, right? Because there's a lot of emotions that are going on for people, a lot.
Yes.
And this is something like even with my clients, we've been talking a lot about is how do you get your emotions out in a way that is okay, that's actually healthy, because there's this fine balance. I don't know if you've ever had this happen, but there's this fine balance of talking so that you get it out and you feel heard and seen and listened to, right? It actually gives us a dopamine hit. And then when you go almost like you're talking about things too much, now you start to feel bad because now you're just stuck in the emotion, right? And then your brain just starts creating more fear or more sadness and more anger. And so we've been having these conversations of like, how do you ride that line of being seen and heard? Or like, what do you do if there's not somebody to reach out to? And like this, I went through this because when I was so sick, like, I didn't feel like talking to anybody. I had no energy. And so one of the things that I did, and I'm still doing this because I find it very helpful, is just to journal. But one of the things that I do when I journal, when I'm working through emotions, is I just label like, what am I feeling? Like I'm feeling anger. Okay. And I don't make myself wrong, because here's part of the problem is when people feel sad or angry or frustrated or whatever it is, and then they feel bad about what they're feeling. Now they've like heaped it. Now they're, oh my God, like I'm ashamed because I got angry, or, I'm feeling guilty about feeling guilty. And it's like that secondary emotion that spirals the whole thing. So when you just write down and you acknowledge, right? Like I do this with my clients all the time. I do it with myself. Like I'm feeling angry. Okay. What else? What else is under there? I'm feeling sad. Okay. What else? I'm feeling frustrated. Eventually you'll get to a point where you've emptied out.
Right.
Where there's nothing left, right? And just by acknowledging what you're feeling and you stop making yourself wrong, when you get to this place where you empty out, now it's almost like you can imagine like looking up through that like vortex of emotions and going like, all right, now what? Now what's the positive learning for me? I go a little deeper. I go a little spiritual. I go, what's my soul's wisdom teaching me about this event or this situation? And all of a sudden you get a whole different perspective on whatever it was that was triggering you. And so I have found that to be an extraordinary, powerful, I'm going to say tool for just helping deal with emotions, especially when maybe somebody's not around. So
Right. Right. And you have to process these emotions, because if you keep them buried and you try to ignore them and suppress them, then it's just going to spiral like anything.
yeah, that's
And manifest into something else too,
totally.
probably an illness of sorts or something.
Yeah. Well, or this is when you see people explode all of a sudden.
Or
Like
explode.
I say it's like leaving a pot on the stove on a low simmer, except you keep filling it and filling it and filling it, and you leave it cranked on. At some point, it's going to boil over because you keep filling it. So when you're actually acknowledging your emotions in the moment as you're dealing with them, it actually gives you a way to just like empty the pot or actually turn it off, right? So that this way you don't get that like boil over kind of happening.
Yes, and I've heard a lot of people talking about the fact that this is the time to do a lot of journaling and meditating. And when we were going back to when we did get really, totally shut down and everything was closed, people found that they had a lot of extra time as well, which really, I think, threw some people out of their comfort zone so much, because they had time to be with themselves and be present. And we don't do that. We don't like to do that. We've never liked to do that. We would always, always be busy and fill our time as much as we could, and all we would do is think about the next thing that you had to do, as opposed to sitting and being present, which is what we had the time to do that. And like you were saying earlier, it's the time to sit with yourself and figure out where you want to go. Who do you want to be going forward? And what are your values? Like really define your values and what's important to you, because all the distractions were taken away from you.
Yeah. And I think especially for entrepreneurs, for business owners who employ other people, who actually help create the economy that keeps money flowing, those are big questions. Those are big, big questions. And especially in a moment where literally something outside of everybody's control. It's not like anybody is like, whoa, I have control over whether the virus spreads or not. Like none of us have any control over that. The only thing you have control over is what are you going to do in this situation? So these people that I really see as like the lifeblood of the economy, like to even give yourself that little bit of space to go like, okay, what is important to me? What does our company stand for? What are we creating in the world? What do we want to create in light of everything that's happened over the last couple months? Those are really deep questions. They're powerful questions. And I can't think of any other time in history where like collectively we've had time to both pause and then get into action so things don't completely fall apart. It's kind of like a weird, I don't know. I get lots of visuals in my head of like visual analogies. It reminds you of like surfing, where like you've got to catch the wave and ride it, right? But the reality is, before you can ride it, you're probably going to fall a lot. And that's kind of where we are right now. We're falling a lot. There's a lot of people are doing the best that they know how in this moment. And again, this is a place where you get to lean into some grace of not expecting everybody to have all the answers, other people, yourself. And once you can lean into that, then we open up for some curiosity and innovation and creativity and all of these things that are going to help us get through this and build something beautiful on the other side.
Right. Because nobody has the answers, and everybody is doing the best that they can. And some people, it's much more difficult for some people versus others, and businesses have been lost. And people have had to close their businesses and pivot and then we have the whole collapse of, well, it's not collapse, but the long-term care homes exposing what was happening there, which had been happening for years and years and years, but how it needs to be revamped. The school system, when they tried to come up with some sort of online schooling that started back in April, my daughter's she's now in grade 12, so she was grade 11, and it was there wasn't much there. There really wasn't much there, and it really depended on the teacher. And I heard from some of the entrepreneurs that I've interviewed who have young children, they were having to basically school their kids themselves, and of
Yeah.
course still trying to run their business.
Yeah.
And so now they've had more time, of course, to start school and everything, but the whole school system, we know, is, you know, archaic and has needed an overhaul for forever. And then you look at the corporate structure of corporations, and how I know from when I worked at the bank, a lot of the systems and processes that were there, it was just, if you would ask about, you know, why do we do something this way? Well, it's always been done that way. That's the way we do it. And again, the whole idea of everybody from Bay Street and downtown Toronto coming and working from home, if you had asked anybody, they would have said, no, it's impossible.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. And it just goes to show it. It's kind of like funny, because when companies start to grow, right, especially small companies, part of what helps them grow is putting structures and systems in place. And then over time, those same structures and systems are the things that can actually create a stranglehold where there's no innovation and creativity and these things happening. So it's like this fine balance. And especially for the people that are either the entrepreneurs, the CEOs, or those C-suite level executives, right? Like, I think like this is an ongoing challenge of growth. Like, how do you stabilize so that the company actually has the legs under it? And then how do you keep growing? Like, it's just,
and shifting and really shifting. I mean, even this year, like when we think about it and going back at the beginning when we were shut down and you know, school was out for March break, then there were another 2 weeks. So we were talking a 3-week shutdown. And then I think they extended it then a month, but every time it was just a bit, because we, you know, and we didn't think that we would be continuing. And now we see what's happening in terms of, you know, the numbers going up and possibly pulling back on some things. So we're continuing, and it's going to continue like this. So we need, everybody needs to think about, what do you want, like you say, creating new, it's like we're starting over in some way, in some ways.
well, and I think one of the core things under here is going to be trust. Not trust that, like, blind trust that everybody's going to have all the answers worked out, but like a fundamental trust that we're going to be okay somehow.
Yes.
Somehow, right? And I mean, this might sound kind of crazy. I was looking at historically some of the pandemics, right, that have happened around the world. Like, I know, like, just in the last few days, we're at a crazy milestone, right? I think we went over 1 million deaths now worldwide. And because of technology and the ability to communicate and all that, like, in one way, okay, it spread globally because of our ability to travel, but also on the flip side, because of that, we were able to take so many precautions where we're not seeing the kind of deaths that they did with, like, you know, 1918, the pandemic, and the what was it, the influenza, the flu,
Spanish flu.
right, the Spanish flu. Thank you.
Yeah.
So like, there are things where I go, okay, if we can take a deep breath and go in the midst of, again, all the unknown, if you can just say, take a few deep breaths and just say, it's going to be okay. I'm okay. It's going to be okay. I'm okay. And it's not like you're fooling yourself or trying to believe something that's not possible. I think it was Albert Einstein, and I'm probably butchering the quote right now, but it said, like, one of the biggest questions we will ever have to answer for ourselves is, do we live in, like, a kind and loving universe? Something like that. I'm sure I totally butchered it. But it's one of those things this is where either people from their religious backgrounds or their spiritual backgrounds, like, this faith is what's going to get us through this, right? And I really do believe at the heart of it, that's a personal choice. That's a personal choice to lean into that energy every day. And when days are hard, or when there's lots of emotions going on, that's really where the people you surround yourself with, your community, like, I always tell my clients, I'm a coach and I have a coach. My clients, like, they all band together. So even through all of this, like, they've had all kinds of things going on, because most of my clients are entrepreneurs, right? But they're not freaking out like, wow, like the sky is falling. They're dealing with things because of the container they're in, because of the community of who are they talking to. And so I really believe, like, that internal, like, it's going to be okay, I'm okay. And then the people you surround yourself with, like, are they uplifting you, helping you look for solutions, helping you out when, you know, you can't think your way out of a paper bag because you're too wound up and stuff. that makes a difference. It makes a huge difference.
Totally. It's all a matter of perspective and how you look at what is happening, because there's things you cannot control, like the virus and everything like that. But there are, on the flip side, so many things that you can control. And with this technology that we have, just imagine if we didn't have that. Oh, we're able to connect like this, and online events have been happening. People who are speakers have had speaking engagements, doing, speaking on online, networking online, and just connecting for the people who are isolated at home, having virtual coffee with somebody.
Yeah.
If you think about how much we have embraced technology and how many people have really had to learn, in some cases, to really learn and adapt to the technology over the last almost 7 months. And everything's there too, in terms of how many people came online offering free webinars and different workshops and things like that on anything that you're interested in.
Yeah. And that's the power of the human spirit. Mm-hmm. That's the power of the human spirit. When we look and go, how do I make a difference? How do we create connection? How do we foster relationships? And that's when we see that intersection of technology and the human spirit. That's when beautiful things happen, right? Where the technology is supporting us in terms of actually connecting, even though maybe we can't be like face-to-face physically. So that, I think, is a real positive that's come out of all of this.
Yes, and also we've been able to connect on a global basis, as well. And with this happening on a global basis like that, it just shows us how interconnected we are, and how we are, and how equal we are, really. It doesn't matter who you are, you can still get that virus, even if you are a billionaire.
Yeah.
Not going to stop it. So that shows
equal opportunity virus.
Well, yeah. Yes.
It's funny though, like what you said, Michelle, of us like being so much more the same because of this. Like, I remember I've lived all over the world. Like, I've lived in Mexico, I've lived in the UK, I've lived in China, I lived in all of these places. And one of the things that I found over and over and over again, and I'm so grateful for my travels because of this, is that when you kind of peeled away some of the cultural differences underneath it all, we are so similar. People want to be loved. They want to be respected. They want to be treated with kindness. They want to know that their lives matter. That's the majority of what I saw all over the world. And now, because of the technology, if we lean into that in the midst of all this, like, I just got goosebumps. Like, we really do have the opportunity to create something beautiful on the other side of this. Right. I believe it.
Yeah, yes, so do I. And the fact is, everybody wants to have a purpose. The basic, human desire is you want to find your purpose.
Yeah.
And the other thing that's I've found so important right now is gratitude, and just being grateful for what we have, because of what we have had taken away from us in terms of, as you were saying, hugs. You'll always be grateful for that. And, sitting at a coffee shop, having coffee with somebody as well. And even just being able to be around your extended family is something. So there's just so much to be grateful for every day. And I think that also makes a huge difference in the whole, in your whole perspective around this.
Yeah. So Tia and I have been doing something probably, I think, over 3 years now, maybe going on 4, where before we go to sleep every night, we say, what are 3 things you're grateful for? And if one of us happens to fall asleep before the other one, then we do it in the morning. But it's just, it's such a nice bookend to the day where we really get to reflect. And sometimes the things are honestly like really simple, like we have a roof over our heads and we have hot water. And other times it's like the first time I got to see my dad, after all of this. And like, I remember the first time I went to see him, we still didn't get close to each other. He has a house. He probably was about 10 minutes away from me. And he sat on the driveway on like the little bricks, and I sat in the passenger seat of my car and opened up the door, and that's how we had a conversation. But it was like I hadn't seen him at that point, I think over 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
And he lives just 10 minutes down the road. You know, like it gets
Yeah.
me a little emotional. Like I look at those kind of things that I'm grateful for. You
Yeah.
know, they're powerful. So there's something anybody listening can do, you know. If you living with somebody, you've got a loved one, or even if you're not, grab a friend and literally just message like, what are 3 things you're grateful for to the end of the day? It's a beautiful family practice. It
Mm-hmm.
brings people together, and it like shifts the focus right before you go to sleep. It's powerful.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I do usually write into my gratitude journal in the morning, but I could see doing that at night is a good practice as well, because like you say, right before you go to sleep, so it gets your mind
Yeah.
into that state.
Yeah. Kind of the last few things you think about before you go to sleep really impact how well or not well you sleep. So
Mm-hmm.
it just changed the wavelengths of what's going on in there.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for joining me. Oh, I guess, what about your business too? We should talk about that a bit. Sorry. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because of that, my whole experience with COVID, one of the things that, again, I really had felt drawn to over the last 2 to 3 years was behind closed doors. I was doing a lot of transformational work, a lot of breakthrough work with my clients, all around like upping their leadership, feminine leadership, especially,
Mm.
but I wasn't talking about it anywhere. Right. Like if you look at my stuff, it's mostly around like sales and that kind of stuff. And it's so interesting because just like so many other people, that like time to pull back, I went, the results that I'm getting with my clients, like over and over again, the kind of things that they're able to launch, even in the middle of COVID and all of these things, it's because of growing their leadership. And so we're in the process of like making this shift even for us from a branding perspective of really starting to talk about the kind of things that I've been doing behind closed doors for about 6 years now. So it's really interesting because I I really do believe strongly that if we bring love into business, if we give leaders the space to actually open up and transform, like so that they can see in themselves what's working, what's not working, this is how companies will transform and not just survive all of this, but actually be on the forefront of innovation and creativity. And oh my God, can we even imagine like some fun in the middle of all of this? So that's really where we're going to be focusing over the next few months. And I'm excited about it. I'm even looking at potentially like there are my clients that have experienced the kind of work I do. They're like, you need to start training people and actually brand this and label it and be not the only person that is doing this. So there's a lot of that that's going to be coming up. But in the meantime, we're just going to do what I was doing like the last couple of years, is just show up for our community and start serving again. Like over the next 3 weeks, we're running just free trainings where Satya and I are going to be live on some of the things that we did to take our business over 6 figures, things to work with people's confidence and like all of these things. So we're going to be doing a lot of that over the next little while.
Oh, that's great. That's great. And this is the time as well. Like this is the time to develop new leaders.
Yeah.
It's, like you say, there's so much opportunity for creating something new, and like you say, bringing love into business. I really love that, because that is something, especially on the corporate side of things, that definitely was not there, at least not in my experience.
Yeah. Well, you and a lot of people that I've heard from that really want the corporate route, right? So, I mean, the more we can change ourselves, the more we're going to have that ripple effect. It always starts here.
Exactly. Right. Exactly. And this has given us that chance to realize that, realize what's important to you, and then go from there, and what makes you happy, because we all need to be happy.
Yeah. Well, and this is where I really believe we're going to see a lot more feminine leadership stepping in, where we're looking at like collaboration and compassion. And one of the things with just even how women are wired, I'm a little bit of a nerd. I love reading like neuroscience and hormones and all of this, how it affects, right? Like especially women who have had kids, literally there are such changes that happen in the brain that really get them thinking about not just what I do, how is it going to affect me, but it has them like looking into the future of like, okay, if this happens, then this, then this, then this is the final result. If you've ever had an argument with your partner, you know, you probably do this very naturally, right? Like as women. But when we talk about feminine leadership, I really feel like the time now is so important for more and more women to step into their feminine leadership and really start owning their voice in terms of all of these transformations that we want to see happen in corporate and business, in how we have that shift between, or that balance really between work lives and personal lives. Anyways, I got a little bit up on my soapbox when I start talking about feminine leadership, so we'll leave that for another time.
You're not the only one though, because I was just listening to a podcast recently and I can't remember exactly who it was on there. I'll have to look it up, but that's exactly what he was talking about. Look to see, we'll see a lot of more feminine leadership going forward. And as well as I think a lot of more entrepreneurs and people wanting to change, people wanting to change the world. And that's, that's what we need to do, because we can see now that anything is possible, because who would have ever thought that everything could be shut down the way it was? So just flip that around to think about what we can create if we put love and kindness and come together as community. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time, Andrea, and I'll put your information up underneath this interview as well. And thank you for being my 100th guest as well. And I'm going to do a giveaway for people to associated with this 100th, to celebrate this 100th episode. I will get together some of my Michele Maher designs in there for a nice giveaway. So
your beautiful bling, as I call it.
Yes. Okay. Well, thank you so much and stay safe. I look forward to when we can see each other in person again.
Me too. I'm sending you a virtual hug from here.
All right. Yes. Thank you. Thank you.